DS roll at night.
What? I can't hear you. I just got blasted by that sound in my ears.
The intro music was a little loud. I apologize.
I'm pretty sure Nick could hear it from my headphones across the table.
Through my headphones.
Which is probably like 8 feet.
6 feet.
6 feet.
Things are a little messy here because we took everything down and redid everything, and everything's just a mess. So.
Well, I'm going to tell her it's 8 feet, if you know what I'm saying.
I don't get it. We talk about Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
And stuff.
Tonight we're going to talk about some stuff.
And some stuff. We alluded to it last episode.
More Charmed One controversy. Just kidding. I didn't do any research, but I'll do a quick Google search to find out what's going on with them, because this is a Charmed One
fan cast.
Fan cast. Yeah, you got it. You did it. You solved my fan cast puzzle.
I'm sure there is a Charms One fan cast.
Yeah, it's this right here.
The number one Charmed fan cast.
Yeah, I don't see anything really up to date. Just kind of talking about her health struggles, and I don't want to do that. So, Shannon Doherty's going through some health things. So
Yeah, I saw that.
we'll return to that. But quote from her is, "Think of each therapy as a horse. You want to ride every horse as long as it rides." Scene.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Each
Think of each therapy as a horse. You want to ride every horse as long as it rides.
what therapy?
So, like, they're just saying that they want to, like, do
You
therapy.
should want to go to therapy as long as therapy wants to do you.
Is that how
Yeah,
it works?
but, like, that, like, I feel like...
But what if I want
is-
to save a horse and ride a cowboy?
Well, whiskey for my men and beer for my horses. I don't know. I feel like we can go down a rabbit hole.
A horse hole.
Yeah, we can go down a horse hole, which is huge.
Yeah, those are big holes, man.
Those are big holes.
Oh, goodness. We're going to be talking about Critical Role's DaggerHeart. Matt Mercer decided to create a tabletop role-playing game, basically.
Yeah, so I mean, they have Darrington Press, which is something that they've had for a couple of years now, which is like a bunch of, I would say, like kind of lighter tabletop games. Like when the second campaign, Ukatoa, one of the characters, they came up with a game that's like a strategy-based game to like fight Ukatoa. Couple like card games. I know they've created. I can't think of the name of it right now. It's gonna drive me crazy. But basically, it's like dueling, where it's like 1v1, and it's like you kind of like create this like 1v1 role playing thing, and it's like got a lot of like pre-made cards. And so, I feel like DaggerHeart kind of came at a time when, like, I think probably they were working on it around the time that Wizards of the Coast was like, "Hey, we're going to charge you more money, and you can't use our game system without our approval. We want your money." And so they're like, "You know what? We don't need it because we are more successful. We've made your brand more successful than you have."
Which they've already created, like Candela Obscura.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that they're creating another system. Is okay.
Yeah, so I mean, when you ask, like, what is DaggerHeart? DaggerHeart is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game of brave heroics and vibrant worlds that are built together with your gaming group. Create a shared story with your adventuring party, and shape your world through rich narrative-focused long-term campaign play. So, I mean, it's D&D-esque. I think it pulls a lot of mechanics from different role-playing games. So, like, kind of what makes DaggerHeart a little bit different is it uses a hope and a fear die. So it uses two 12-sided die, like for the main rolling versus like a d20 that you would use in D&D. And basically, when you roll for an action, you roll both of them, and if you roll with your hope die and that's higher, different things happen. like if your hope dies higher, and if you roll and your fear dies higher, different things happen.
It's similar to the Star Wars role-playing game.
So there's Star Wars role-playing game. There's Lasers Plus Feelings, which is another similar one, but you roll d6s instead.
I think you use in the Star Wars game it was Force or Sith, and it wasn't even like a sided dice. It was either one or the other, like a chance dice, basically is what it
Yeah.
was. And it just if you had so many Force dice, it would succeed even better or worse or whatever, or you could rely on that. I don't really remember the system, but it feels a lot sort of like that blended in with D&D.
Yeah, so I mean, it does pull a lot of elements from that. So, I've got the DaggerHeart.com website pulled up, and the first thing was kind of just doing like a little intro into Daggerheart, and it's like I'm brand new to role playing games. Can I play Daggerheart?
No.
Absolutely. Daggerheart was specifically designed to be easy to pick up for anybody, regardless of your experience level with tabletop games. You build your characters and world together as a group, which also makes things a little less intimidating for first timers. So right now it's an open beta. I can explain to you what an open beta is, but if you are on our podcast, you probably know because you were probably nerdy. So right now it's in open beta. You can access pretty much everything you need at DaggerHeart.com. The open beta basically is going all the way through the end of summer. So probably something that we'll see in like August. So if you want, you can sign up and you can use it. It's supposed to launch in 2025. They don't really have like a hard launch date. And then obviously they want you to like submit feedback during that test, so they can make it better. Because I know you mentioned before we started that you probably had some reservations about it, so I'm sure that you'll bring them up.
Nope.
But I guess we can kind of go through like the basics of it. So I mean, really, it's a flowy system, and the goal is to be story focused and supposed to be collaborative across your entire gaming party. We talked about it basically at the top is you have what's called duality dice, which are two 12-sided dice, a hope and a fear dice. When your DM asks for you to perform an action roll, you roll your hope and fear at the same time. You add them together, and any modifiers that you would have that would influence the roll, you add that to it. And then basically, if you tell the DM if your fear or hope dies higher, and then if the roll beats the DC, you succeed. So if you succeed with a hope die, you earn what's called like a hope token, which is like a liquid resource that you can use. And then if you succeed with fear, you get what you want. So you actually succeed, but there might be a consequence or a complication. And then the DM gets a fear token that they can use against you, which we can kind of talk about a little bit later. I just think that's interesting that like you have two dice that you would think you'd hear fear, that it's like, okay, it's immediately going to affect me in a bad way. But they're like, no, you can like, it's like a partial success, which some systems like Blades in the Dark use like a failure. They use like a partial success, then like a success, and then like a critical success. And then if you roll your hope and fear dice and they're the same, doesn't matter if it's ones, twos, threes, or whatever, and that's a critical success. And basically, you get whatever you want, like whatever you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to if you're trying to seduce a dragon, you seduce it.
Oh yeah.
You get a hope token, and you get to clear a stress, which is another factor in the game. Thoughts on that 12 D12 system?
It feels like they don't want you to fail, and everything will just succeed until the DM's like, no, I want you to fail right now.
Okay.
It definitely does feel more story driven. So like the DM can just be like, this is a story and we're going from point A to point B. Everyone's going to succeed and it'll be a grand fun all time.
I mean, but you can also not succeed though. Like we've all rolled bad rolls on it, and like,
But there's way less of a chance, it seems. in this system.
Yeah, but I mean, you think of like, so like if you succeed with a fear die, like a negative consequence can happen right then and there. So like you may land a hit, but it may get two other guards that are gonna come mess you up, and you're like, oh crap.
It just seems more of a system for less failure to me.
I think it's more like just no matter what, you're progressing the story.
Right.
But unlike with D&D, where your story can just end, you perpetually go forward, which, I mean, as a DM, that's the whole point of a DM in Dungeons & Dragons is you're there to kind of game mechanic and overlordy-ish, but you're also in charge of just progressing the story.
But sometimes there's fun in the failure of the story and then pushing it further. Like when M. Scott died, and now the story shifts completely.
Spoilers if you haven't listened to our campaign.
And now the story completely shifts in a different direction. I think that's a whole lot of fun of D&D, because you tell stories in failure. And this system just feels like we're just going to tell a story and everything's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, but there also is like a difficulty rating. So if like basically you can set it like as a 5, which would be super easy. So if you roll, like if you clear a 5, you immediately clear whatever you're trying to clear. If you a 15, that's like average. So when you're rolling 2d12, like 15 is like the average, like statistically that you get. But you could also set like it as a 30. So if you want them to fail, you know, that's like part of it. You know, I had a campaign where my people literally their first session, there's a dude in full plate armor like in this bar who's way bigger, and even someone said like, oh, this dude has red skulls above his head, and someone still picked a fight with him. And like that was like one of those things where it's like, okay, I would like, I don't want them to win, I want them to fail. And so then, you know, that would be one where I'd be like, all right, well, let's set it like at like a 25. And so they really, really have to roll well. So I think there are mechanics that you can put in there because, once again, like Nick said, is you are the, you know, the GM, the DM, like you are the storyteller. Like you can put that in place and be like, well, I don't want you guys to cross this bridge. Like I'm not going to make it easy for you. And like, you know, they have to figure a more wild solution around it, or they can risk it all and go for it. So I get it. I think for me, there's a lot of things going on. I'll get back to like the character creation, but the whole like stress. So like you have to like keep an eye on stress. So if someone attacks you, you can choose to like, you know, take a stress. Like so basically, if someone attacks you and it doesn't clear your threshold for like low damage, you can just take a stress instead of damage. But if they go over, you can take a stress to lessen your damage, which is a mechanic. But then you also have armor slots that you can lose an armor slot to prevent damage. And so like now I'm tracking stress, I'm tracking HP, I'm tracking armor. So there's that. Then I've got my hope. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So like I'm with you, is like, you know, I've only kind of like played like just like mini little like scenarios to myself, so I haven't really like played it as a system, so I can't be like,
right,
this is great. But like the fact that I have to track all those is making me have to mark off stress on my character sheet as Phil. So
right. And I watched the YouTuber talk about the system, and he showed it to someone else who took it way more cynical. He even points it out, like this person took it way too cynical. It just seems like more stuff for you to buy. All the cards, all the stuff that you need, the dice. It seems like it's going to be a system where you need special things and you keep buying special things.
I mean, I think it just really is going to depend because, you know, right now if you go to Demiplane, you can download all the resources that you need, and it's very similar to like D&D Beyond where it has everything that you need. But like to that point is like you can go out and you can buy minifigs for D&D.
Sure.
You can go out and buy, you know, like Wizards of the Coast branded a deck of many things.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of stuff. I mean, Hasbro owns it, so now like we got a Lego set coming out in the
Hell
summer.
yeah.
So
Yes,
I probably will be getting it. Not gonna lie,
it's $350.
I don't care.
Okay.
I love me some giant sets.
This is also coming from the dude that had like all of the Star Wars Lego sets.
Yep. Yep. And then I haven't really bought any because they all died in the fire.
Which also,
The
fair point.
the Star Wars people or the Lego.
Well, both, yes.
Okay, fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Fair enough.
The sequel trilogy killed my hope of Star Wars.
Oh no! So that's not a new hope for you.
That's a whole other podcast that I can get into.
Womp womp womp. So I mean, they do pull a lot of like the core character like options from D&D. So like for class, you can be a bard, you can be a druid, you can be a guardian, a ranger, a rogue, a seraph, which is kind of like a paladin. Hey, no coughing, knock it off. A sorcerer, a warrior, and a wizard. Which that was really hard to say. Instead of like having, I don't really even know how to explain like the domains. But basically, well, schools of magic would probably be like a similar thing. Like schools of magic, school of bards, school of rock. But basically, like the domains are arcana, which is innate and instinctual magic. Blade, which is the domain of weapon mastery. Bone, which is the domain of swiftness and tactile mastery. Codex, which is the domain of intensive magical study. Grace, which is the domain of charisma and enchantment. Midnight, which is the domain of shadow and secrecy. Sage, which is the domain of the natural world. Splendor, which is life and death. And then Valor, which is the domain of protection. So essentially, when you start the game, you pick two of those. And those kind of like play along with like whatever class you're going to get. So if you're going to be like a seraph, which is like a paladin, you would probably be like in the domain of splendor and valor, which basically life, death, and protection, which that's, what a paladin does. And so basically you pick those through character creation. You can have like 5 domain cards in your bank, but you can't start or in your vault is what they call it, but you can't start swapping those out until after level I can't talk. Till after level 5. So they like basically railroad you for half the game. You have to be 2 specific domains.
Yeah, they're kind of like the feats.
Mm-hmm. Hey man, feats is what I had feats written down all over here, and now you took them away from me.
This Wikipedia article is actually kind of interesting. It's the DaggerHeart from Critical Role Wiki, and it gives you 14 steps for character creation.
Okay.
Choose a class, choose a foundation. Each class has a number of foundation cards to choose from. Again, going back to you have to buy things because now you have to buy cards for your foundation. And I'm being cynical and trying to be, devil's advocate here. That help better define what kind of focus you'd like your character to have. Choose your heritage. Heritage is made up from both ancestry and community, and a community card.
Yep. I mean, I can literally go through my character that I created.
These 2 cards that you establish your physical appearance and the kind of environment you grew up on. Assign your character traits. Distribute 4 points across your character traits. Then subtract 1 point from any trait. When you're rolling, set your hit points and hope. I'm already like, that's way too much. I'm already done.
Well, so when they say you start with your ancestry and your community is basically like, so for me, the character I made is what's called a ribbit. So it's literally like an anthropomorphic frog person.
Right.
And their community is Wonderborn, which is essentially like a, nomadic frog, like travels around. And so it gives me like I have a nomadic pack, so I add a pack to my inventory once per session. I may spend a hope to reach into this pack and pull out a common item that is useful in a situation. So that would be like that feat. So it'd be kind of like,
It would be like human, and then I'm a noble, and then you get like an extra language.
yeah, or like a
Similar.
halfling, you can always reroll ones.
Similar stuff.
And so that one's, you've got that. I picked a seraph, which is essentially like a paladin. So at the beginning of each session, I can roll a number of d4 dice equal to my spellcast trait, and I can store them on this card, and basically I can use them to help reduce damage. So I think that's kind of like similar to like a lay on hands type thing. I can I get maybe more like shield spell. But
Right.
for a paladin, is you can block that.
I wasn't done.
Oh well,
Joking. It goes into like set your hit points and your hope, choose your starting weapon, choose your armor, what's in your inventory, choose your description, take a domain deck of cards. Again with the cards. Different domains or, class name, character sheet, choose 2 cards total, level 1 cards, and those domains from the domain decks, blah, blah, blah. Answer background questions, generate experience, record your name and pronouns, and create connections. And it looks like each class has about 2 subclasses.
Yep.
And they're very kind of on the nose to like Vox Machina, in my opinion.
No, what do you mean like a paladin that has an option to choose to be a protection fighter and or have wings and fly? They've never once had a paladin in any of the campaigns that could fly or be a protection fighter.
Like the bard is a wordsmith, uses clever wordplay to captivate crowds. Who would that be?
I mean, that's all bards though. Like that's not directly Critical Role. Like a bard is supposed to be. I mean,
All right. A druid, warden of the elements, embodies nature.
it's a druid.
It just feels a little on the nose. Their archetypes.
I mean, that's been core D&D for 1,000 years.
For thousands
Of
years.
years.
For thousands of years, that is what our ancestors drew on wall paintings. +2 to charisma.
They kind of did the rogue dirty. The Nightwalker uses stealth, or the Syndicate that has useful contacts everywhere.
Splitting it up a little bit based on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they do have like a thing built in, whereas like a rogue can automatically like they can choose to like spend a hope, and they can just like stand in one spot, and then they're effectively invisible, as long as they don't take an action. So I mean, it's more or less invisibility spell, and then sneak attack. Dagger. Come on, I was on the nose for you.
Yeah.
You didn't take it. That's so sad. What was I gonna say? Base stats. So instead of like your modifiers that you would use, so like your intellect, your charisma, your dex, all that, you have them broken down into basically 6 different base stats. You've got agility, which is your sprinting, your leaping, and your maneuvering. You've got your strength, which is your lifting, smashing, and grappling. Your finesse, which is control, hide, tinker. Tinker, not tinkle,
Or tinkle. I mean, you can tinkle
I
too.
guess you could like finesse a tinkle. Instinct, which is perceive, sense, navigate. Presence, which is charm. Maybe charmed ones. Perform or deceive. And then knowledge, recall, analyze, and comprehend. So I do like that they put all of those. I mean, that's one mechanic that I like, is that only 6, and then I can choose from which one that makes sense. So like I don't have to be like, all right, insight, perception, those are all like. So like instinct is perceive, sense, and navigate. So I don't have to roll like a survival check. I don't have to roll a history, or it's all built into one. So I really like that. Part of it. The damage was kind of interesting because instead of having like X amount of like hit points, you have little like tick marks that you take down. So instead of like someone rolling and doing 47 damage to me, that would just be something that would be basically considered severe harm, and I would take like, so say I had 7 hit points, which is, like a 7 hit points. If they rolled severe damage, it would take away 3 of my hit points, and then I'm basically at 4 hit points left. So that's the one that I'm kind of like, I like the variety, I like the leveling up and the rolling the hit dice and having things in the D&D mechanics. So that's one of those ones that I'm like, not really a big fan of.
Yeah, I was just reading about that. Characters start with six hit points.
Yeah.
The damage is determined by rolling a d20 dice. The player's armor score is subtracted from that roll, but the armor is damaged. It can be repaired under a short rest. If the total is below the preset threshold, the player takes a stress point instead of damage.
Yep.
If it exceeds the threshold, depending on how much the player loses, 1, 2, or 3 hit points.
Yeah. So, like, basically, if I'm getting attacked by a volley of arrows and it's going to be severe damage, I can use 2 armor points and drop it down to basically just 1 damage, which is like what they use in Blades of Dark. They use harm, and 1 harm, 2 harm, 3 harm, which is basically like, ouchie, oh, please don't do that, 3, oh my god, don't.
my leg,
Yeah,
my leg.
my leg.
If the player loses all of their hit points, they can choose to either permadeath but achieve a critical success, or permanently lose a hope point, or roll both hope and fear dice to potentially return without dying. There is a single-use resurrection spell available per game.
Yeah. So the video with Spencer Stark, who's he's the game designer, and Matt Mercer, bet you've never heard of him. The 3 options for death are Blaze of Glory, the one final action that will be a critical success. So you can literally be like, I'm dead. Leroy Jenkins, go, and you can, seduce the dragon. You thought I was going to kill the dragon, but I'm going to seduce it.
Seduce it.
And then they have
Death by snoo.
Yup.
Avoid death, face the consequences. Basically, you become unconscious and you can't do anything until you are healed. You roll a fear die, and if you fail, you get a scar, and you lose that, like you said, that 1 hope die, or that 1 hope slot permanently. So if you use up, or if your hope is all filled up, you basically have 1 that you're missing forever. And then the risk it all, you basically roll your duality. If your hope is higher, you stay on your feet and you clear hit points or stress equal to the value that you rolled. And then if the fear is higher, you die. But if you roll a critical success, so if you roll snake eyes or double 12s or whatever, you stay on your feet and you're fully healed and you lose all your stress points.
Ooh.
So it's like, that's one of those things that's like, it could be really cool. But like the fact that you give me an option to go down in a Blaze of Glory, like we know Renfrey immediately is going to be like,
100%.
100%.
That's me. That's
100%.
what I'm going to do.
100%.
I'm going to defeat the dragon, but also pretty much be dead at the same time.
100%.
I mean, but it's cool though.
Mutual
Like,
death.
once again, it kind of comes down to, the like trying not to make everything a failure and trying to run like make it a story, trying to keep it cohesive. And I don't know, the death options kind of is like, well, do I really love this character, or am I have another one re-rolled ready to go?
I always have at least 1 ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I have probably 12 characters ready to go at a moment's notice. But I mean, sometimes you do have like that, like you grow attached to a character and you're just like, this is so fun. I'm going to hate to lose this person, especially if you get super far along in the game.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, how long do these campaigns or games go in totality? Like, is it like we sit down one night and we finish a whole like campaign, or?
I mean, you can. I mean, it's one of those things. I'll say in the long lines of like you could do a one shot, you could do like a few episodes, like a mini series, or you could do a full campaign. I mean, they say that a campaign is 1 to 10 levels. I didn't really dive into like the level progressions of it because I didn't really necessarily think that was like important to like a overview of it. But I mean, 1 to 10, I would assume that you're probably not leveling up as fast.
Right.
And then they make it to where you can only have two domains, up until 5th level. Like you can't change your domain, so like half the game you basically are what you start with.
Gotcha.
So at least that's how I interpreted it. I know it's a beta. I know things can change. So I do hope that people have similar feedback to us. I've watched a couple YouTube videos where people have been like, "This is cool," but they've also are hardcore Critical Role fanboys, which I think I'm also quite a Critical Role fanboy. But like, I can look at this and be like, some things are great, but like trying to teach a new person, like they're like, "Oh, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons." Like, all right, so now you got to keep track of your stress points,
Your hope points, your domain cards,
domain cards.
your armor.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about combat yet. So combat that's a wild bag of cats if you ask me. So basically, so another cool thing is if you have a hope die, you at any time can give advantage to one of your compatriots. So you can spend a hope die and they get a 1d6, so then they add it to their D12 roll plus a d6. So that can help them, succeed. And then if they have disadvantage, same exact thing. You roll a d6, and then you subtract the d6 from it. Basically, combat, you ask the DM if they're in range. So you're like, all right, cool, you're in combat now. The way they break it down is melee is touching. So melee is basically you're next to the person.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Very
I'm
close.
not touching you. I'm not touching you.
They say that, and they use like physical like things for measurement. So one of the cards. So Tim, you could buy one of those cards, which basically that is very close. Close is the length of a pencil. So maybe they'll have some branded pencils you could buy.
Oh God.
Far is the length of an.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, one R. Is the length of a piece of paper, and then very far is anything beyond the piece of paper. It's like, oh, go from one piece of paper and it's like an inch away. Nope, sorry, they're very far. For like ranged attacks. So I was just like, okay, it's interesting, but I think it's supposed to be more theater of the mind. Just the fact that they're like using approximations and they're not like, okay, it's going to be 5 grids, 5 grids you travel. So attacks, if it's in range, you roll an action roll. If it beats the difficulty rating, you roll the damage die. For the DM, if you are rolling to see if a character is hit, you roll a d20, which it's like, wait, what? You roll a d20, add the modifiers, and see if it beats their evasion score. So every character has an evasion score.
I'm out. I mean, when we were talking about the earlier editions of D&D, it was a lot like that. Like, you need 40 sheets of something to figure out, did we hit or not? Like, what was the D&D version where you're going in reverse?
Oh, the Thaco system? Where it's like you want to roll lower?
Original D&D was the higher your AC, the worse off you are. You want a lower number.
Yeah. So that was one of those ones I was just like, huh? So, like, I don't know. I think the D20 system, for me, is the best system.
100%.
Now, if you're playing, like, a one-shot, like the Laser Feelings, where you roll the 2d6, like, I think that's cool. Blades in the Dark, like, specific game mechanics make sense. But I think if you're, like, doing, like, a traditional one, like, I don't know. I think it's very straightforward. It makes sense. Like, I would love to adopt, like, maybe, like, a hybrid of it and include, like, the base stats so that I have the agility, the strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge, and not have to worry about the 20 different options that you have for, the history checks, the investigation checks, the perceptions, the insight. Like, I think streamlining that could make sense, and I really haven't given one D&D 1 or one D&D.
Well, they've changed it now.
I know, so I really have, like, I kind of looked at it at the base level, but that was, like, at the time that everyone was mad at them, so I think I was mad at them, and I was just like, the 5e isn't broken.
I think they've recounted a lot of that stuff, and they're now calling it 5.5.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I was really excited for is like they're like trying to like focus on making almost like a potential of like a virtual like D&D like tabletop simulator. Like that was the part that I was excited about because it like takes out having to have 4 different tool sets to do it, and if you're doing it virtually, like it makes it easier. That's what I was excited for, and I didn't really care about them taking away a lot of the races and the classes and all of those things. But yeah, you have to beat a thing, and you have an evasion. What was it? There's an action tracker. So basically, if a combat takes longer than 1 to 2, like actions, so if it's not like a quick stab, that person's dead, the DM gets an action tracker. So it's a card that for every time you attack and you succeed, you have to put action, basically like a hope on there. And at any time, so basically it's like, all right, cool, Nick attacks me. There's a token on there. So I can spend that token to make one of my combatants attack back. So that is kind of interesting because if it's like you're fighting one dude and there's 5 people in your party, that kind of balances out a little bit. But once again, it's another like
Another mechanic
that you're doing. Like, okay, now I've got these little things over here. I'm like, I'm about to get my Pokemon cards out. I'm about to get my Magic the Gathering cards out.
We're going to play Pogs.
Yeah, Pogs. So like, we need to come up with the ultimate system. That's what this podcast needs to become. Is we need to come up with the most convoluted way to play tabletop. And I think the first rule is you can only play underneath the table. So that
just
way,
raise the legs up.
No, it has to be. I think whatever the standard. I think like 29 or I don't know, whatever.
28 inches.
Sure, that is like it has to be that height. If it is, every roll is a disadvantage. You can have no light sources underneath the table. The only lights in the room can only be candles.
On top of the table.
On top of the table.
You have to roll a d20 minus a d4 plus a d6 divided by a d8.
If there's a mirror anywhere in your house.
Dude, that's like Munchkin rules right there.
Honestly, this does kind of give me a little bit of Munchkin vibes because you do have like those cards. Let me see if I can build a character here.
No.
Just kind of walk through some of the races that they've added, which are pretty cool.
Well, you're a little frog boy.
So the ribbit's super cool.
They did a one-shot using the system, and they were all animals.
Not all.
They were all animals.
I mean, it's not necessarily that they're all like animals. Like one dude was like, because there's not all animals. So.
I've seen goblins.
So there's the Clank, which are sentient mechanical beings built from such materials as wood, metal, stone, and clay to resemble humanoids, animals, or even inanimate objects. So I'm kind of like, well, now I want a toaster Clank. Be like, all right, I'm gonna be a toaster rogue.
I roll for toast.
And then you just like chill like on a table, and then they're like, I wonder what this strain. Stab, stab, stab. There's the Daemon, which are
Matt Damon.
Yeah, yes, it is Matt Damon. Well, you are the descendant of fallen gods who possess sharp canine pointed ears and horns. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. But really, it kind of gives tiefling vibes.
100%.
Like it literally looks like.
I mean, they literally have like the horns like tieflings, a tail. 100% tiefling.
The
vibes.
Dracona, which are dragonborn. The dwarf, which new to me.
Yeah.
What's a dwarf?
Yeah. Fairy.
They have elf.
Fawn, which is like satyr.
It feels like these.
They have Furbolg on there as well.
Yeah, Fearbog's on there. Fungrill, which is basically a mushroom person, which is kind of a vibe. I'm like, I want to be like a Fungrill, but like almost kind of like a Ronin, like with the like my mushroom cap would be like my hat.
They have one
hat.
literally So on the PDF I got for DaggerHeart, they have one that's dressed up like a samurai with the big
Yeah, I mean that's basically
mushroom
what
top.
I want to do. Yeah,
I mean, it
You're like,
feels
man, that's got a big mushroom head.
the Galapa, which is a turtle.
it feels like D&D bought on Wish with the races, or like we have that at home. That meme.
Yeah, yeah. They've got
Halflings, humans.
Qatari, which are cat people.
Yep.
The Ribbit and the Simia, which is basically like a monkey person. So I mean, there are some pretty cool things. So then, like, if you once you select that, and they all have like different like ancestral traits. So, like the Simia take advantage on agility rolls, and that involve balancing and climbing, and you add a +1 to your evasion, which I know you're excited for the evasion.
Mm-hmm.
And then so once you do that, you choose your community. There's Highborn community, which is hoity-toity. Loreborn, which is more like, school smarts. Orderborn, you're a cop.
Are you a cop? You got to tell me if you're a cop.
Ridgeborn, you're from a mountain. Seaborn, you're from...
The ocean.
I was really hoping you're from the Midwest. Slyborn, you very, very sneaky. Underbone, or Underborn, whoops.
I'll give you my
Ooh.
underbone.
Yeah, I was gonna say. You're like a Duragar. You're underground people. Wonderborn, you're a nomad, and then Wildborn.
Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
Deep in the forest.
Is this now going to be a Tenacious D fan cast? Honestly, we would probably gain so much traction, and we could probably get Jack Black on here.
Maybe.
100%.
And then so your class, you've got the Bard. You've got which I've already gone over those.
Druid, Guardian, Ranger, Seraph, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warrior, Wizard.
And then so I know you're talking about the Rogue was done dirty, so let's look at the Rogue and what you get here. So you can hide, you can move into a location where no enemies can see you. You are hidden, and you are unable to be directly targeted by attacks, or any rolls against you are at disadvantage. As a Rogue, when you are hidden, targets also can't see you, even when they move into line of sight. So I just picture like you just like stand in the middle of a room, and you're like, as long as I don't move, they can't get me.
It must have been the wind.
And then the Syndicate, like you were saying, Syndicate, people everywhere, and then Nightwalker, cover of shadow, and you navigate your environment.
I do want to point out, you can play with physical disabilities, so there's a section for combats and wheelchairs coming up.
Go on.
It's coming soon.
Oh, I thought you were saying like it was about to be said on our podcast, and I was like, I don't have that.
No,
so that's
they don't have. So it's a section that's in progress. So combat wheelchair coming soon. And so I've seen some mock, because they've got a lot of like some of their design stuff on here. So there's like one, where was it? It's literally like a knight in a wheelchair, like it's getting ready to joust with somebody else. There's another one where someone's sitting on a weird chair thing that looks like it's got like a body of some sort of feline, so it's got 4 legs. So you just pretty much ride this weird like chair thing. It's like if you did transmutation in Harry Potter and it looks like half chair, half whatever animal, you just transmute
like
it.
a cat bus. Hell yeah. But like the Bard, you can choose to be a Heart of the Poet, which when speaking to a person you're trying to impress, persuade, or offend, use at least 3 rhyming words and spend a hope to add 1d4 to the action roll against them. So the fact that they're like, all right, well, you actually have to like incorporate that into it does give major like Sam Riegel as Scanlan vibes, where they're like, all right, you gotta sing us a song.
Slimy, timey-wimey.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's cool. I think it's supposed to get people more excited and be more. I don't want maybe more mainstream.
Sure.
Would be the best way to put it.
I think it's just them getting away from Wizards of the Coast. I mean, they kind of did it with the show. nothing's D&D branded. They even in campaign 3 have gotten away from any of the names of the gods. They've changed them.
Yeah.
It just feels like a system to fully divorce themselves away from Wizards of the Coast. And I would think that when they get closer to releasing it, I bet it looks more like D&D.
Well, they can't get too similar because otherwise...
Well, they can't license the D20 system. So you can take the D20 system, even verbatim of what D&D does. You can use that. You just can't say, tiefling.
It's a daemon, daemon.
So and they've already alluded to it with a wink and a nudge. I mean, one of their videos that they posted on their YouTube was Travis taking one of his D&D characters, and look how effortless it is to transition into DaggerHeart.
I mean, it is pretty effortless. I mean, they do, like, the system that they have here online, like, it does make it easy. What's cool is, like, something that's different than using D&D Beyond is, like, when you go in and, like, have to quit messing with your microphone.
I do what I want.
No, stop it. If I can't have purple, you can't mess with that. Oh. But, like, background questions, so instead of having to, like, figure out in your head, it kind of helps lead you there. So for the bard, who from your community taught you to have such confidence in yourself? You were once in love. Who was it with, and how did they hurt you? And then you've always looked up to another bard. Who are they, and why do you idolize them? So they, like, throw things in there to kind of give you ideas. And then, like, you can enter your experience, which are different examples, like backgrounds, like a bodyguard, con artist, pirate,
Sex slave.
specializations. So yeah, you could probably be a magical historian, sex slave, map maker, or a WAP maker. Yeah, like this one, a street doctor. Classic.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more like supposed to have to take a lot of the thought and the character creation, and like the bard entry isn't as hard because they like dumb down some of the things, but then when you're like, I gotta track 3 different things, and now that guy over there who's being mean to me, he's got all these tokens and he's gonna hurt me. And then like the creating the connections is like, what made you realize you were going to be such good friends? What do I do that
tangled.
annoys you? Why do you grab my hand at night? So it's like you can make connections with like people in your parties, and so like you can start that like weird, like, I don't know, like make the
Docking?
Yeah. Do the thing like that. So yeah, I mean, interesting system. I think I will give it like maybe like one shot try at some point, but
At some point, I would be more interested to see the full release and how much of it has changed or has not changed, or even seeing the rumor is campaign 4 with Critical Role is going to be the system. So seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, they did a one shot with it. So I started listening to it. I didn't get all the way through it just because, life, and I didn't think we were actually going to talk about DaggerHeart. I kind of shoehorned it in last week, and I was like, no, they don't want to do it. And then you're like, hey, we're going to do it. And I'm just like, damn it. They got me. They got me good.
I mean, I've been kind of disenchanted with Critical Role lately, so I'm kind of in that mood.
Well, to surprise you, we have a guest on our show.
Oh my God, it's Matt Mercer.
Hello.
Just the way they've done things lately. They're not doing live things anymore, or the weekly show isn't live. It's all pre-recorded, and you can tell. It seems like they record 3 or 4 episodes at once, and then so that first episode, so it's the 5th episode,
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what's going on anymore because it's been like 3 weeks for them. And it's just, I don't know. There was something about them doing it live on Twitch or YouTube that added to the feeling of it, and it just seems more corporate now.
Right.
They got the Amazon money. And they're just kind of, in my opinion, I'm not defending Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast whatsoever. I think they're morons too. But kind of riding the wave of let's hate on them because they're super corporate, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. Let's hate on them because that's the new fad. So they created their own system to get away from it. And it just seems the system, I'm being very cynical, seems like a system of buy our Critical Role cards, our domain cards, Critical Role, has our faces on it, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I want to buy stuff with your face on it.
Thanks.
I want to just buy your face.
Thanks. I want your face off.
Yeah. This is now a face-off fan cast. We talk about Nicolas Cage and John Travolta pre-Scientology? Question mark? Asterisk?
I thought he was always in Scientology.
I don't know. I mean, I guess technically if he's a reincarnated alien, I guess technically he always has been
It's true.
part of Scientology.
So I'm just kind of angry at Critical Role at the moment.
You dodged that Scientology question a little too fast, Skinwalker.
The next podcast will be about Scientology.
Oh no, it's gonna be like the South Park episode with Chef, and he says you can't have that, and then the next episode we find out that Nick is secretly a Scientologist, and so then we spend the next
Spoils.
episode telling or basically writing him off the show.
Just hear me get murdered in the background.
Yeah.
Took care of that one, guys.
All right, guys, we figured it out.
My whole other issue with Critical Role in this new system is they made so much money off of D&D, Wizards of the Coast. I mean, they practically launched D&D Beyond. You watch Campaign 2, and they're talking about D&D Beyond every other episode.
I mean, a majority of like the new subclasses and races and stuff like that have all been things that were featured in Campaign 1, 2, and 3. Like, well, not really 3 anymore, but like 1 and 2. Like, that's stuff that they play tested.
right?
Like, there's source books that are Tales of Exandria. You can toggle a thing in D&D Beyond to add Critical Role content.
And now,
And Rick and Morty.
And Rick and Morty.
and it just seems like, nah, we're gonna do our own thing now because we're super cool.
I mean, I think they did it because of the whole open gaming license and like they've built this thing. And I think, when you think of D&D, it's one of those things is that both those brands have built themselves up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they were like a symbiotic relationship, and then they're like, oh well, now that you've made us all this money and you're in our pockets and we're in your pockets, we want more in your pockets. And so they're like, all right, well, cool, we're gonna create our own system. And
So then we can have our fans be in our pockets.
yeah, which I mean,
It's corporate.
it's brand loyalty. I mean, I think that's like similar to like Apple and Android. Like you're gonna have those people that are one or the other.
And that's kind of my general point is you're seeing Critical Role becoming Wizards of the Coast. They're no longer the people that you watch and you're just in on their home game and they're cutting it up in Campaign 1 and they go on wild tangents and they're having so much fun. It's now just corporate and buy things from us and here's our brand and check out our Amazon show. And it just, I don't know, they're becoming Wizards of the Coast in my mind. Here's our own other thing, Darrington Press, where you can buy all of our stuff. And it's like, I get it. I mean, that happens. You start small and then you get big and you make more money. It's just kind of like, I don't see Dimension 20 doing that.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, they're not, I don't think, nearly as big. I think they got started a little bit later in the game.
I mean, I would say they're just about as big as Critical Role.
I mean, that all comes from the whole dropout TV and college humor. So, like, I think it's a whole fringe thing. I think collectively, like, probably similar, like, liquid cash when you think of like Dropout TV and all that stuff, and like that's an actual subscription service that you have to pay for. So they've actually figured out that model. Like, if I had to start paying a subscription to watch Critical Role, like I'm not doing that. Like, there's so many D&D. Like, I do like it. I still am a huge fan. I don't feel the same sentiments. I still think that like when they're playing the game, I think they're playing it the way that they've played it for years. But I do get it. Like, off the top, they start talking about like, I'm the CEO. You know, I have this going on. I'm the COO. Here's our merch. This is, you know, I do understand the buy, but I think also like a lot of that is because the community has been like, we want this stuff. Like, we're going to eat it up. Like, I wanted the Ukatoa like blue Henley thing, and I've asked for it for like 2 Christmases, and every single time it's like sold out. And my Secret Santa's like, it's not in stock. And I'm like, it's in stock when I put it on my list. And so like the fact that they're selling out of this stuff, like that's something
100%.
that's years old that people are like, oh no, I still love it and I still want it. Like, they're always going to be this. So I think that's that whole like brand loyalty, and you know.
Well, it goes, in my mind, it goes to that hipster band that you liked, and then they got big, and they sold out, and they now just write pop songs. It's the kind of similar vibe for me, anyway.
So next week we're going to talk about Tim's fallout with Fall Out Boy and Good Charlotte.
Again, my opinion.
or Adidas is going to pick us up and we're all 3 going to be wearing Adidas tracksuits like Good Charlotte.
I mean, and that's the rub, right? If we got big and famous, absolutely, I'd sell out. Buy my merch.
Tim's like, I would like to retract my previous statements on this. I am now in the pockets of Critical Role.
Right? It just seems weird that they made the split when they made so much off of D&D. And to rebuttal that, I mean, D&D saw a resurgence because of Critical Role.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
you know, there were a few smaller fringe podcasts that were making D&D popular, but then when Matt Mercer came on board and they're like, oh, we've got all these voice actors, like, this is taking it to the next level.
It's true.
And they're like, you know, everyone, you know, loves Laura Bailey, and they're like, she has been my childhood crush, she has been my adulthood crush, she will be my old man crush. And now, like,
well, if you're a 90s kid and you watched anime, that's your cast.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or played any of the major
video
like
games.
AAA video games.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
they're all in there, and then they bring other people in there. And I think a lot of like the people from Dimension 20 have like kind of crossed over with Critical Role, and then when they come on Critical Role, all the Critical Role people are like, well, let's go over and check out Dimension 20. So it's just like, it's this like unstoppable machine. And so then you're gonna find out like next probably, you know, if Dimension 20, which is going to be awkward. If Dimension 20 picks it up, they're like, well, now we're Dimension Duality Dice. They pick up, you know, that system. Like, it could gain traction, and who knows? I mean, you know, we're in the beta. We'll see what happens.
Well, and I'll say, I mean, in a financial standpoint, it's not a bad idea to create something that's your own that can continue to earn you some sort of income, because it's not like they're planning on playing D&D on a podcast for Amazon and Wizards of the Coast for the rest of their lives. But if they have something that hits well enough that can continue to progress.
I mean, that is another thing, is I feel like, you know, to Tim's point, is a lot of people have also been losing favor with them, and it's like a one-trick pony. Like, campaign 1, like, you can't beat the synergy and like the love and the like very like grassroots like growth that they had. And then you go through and you listen to all those episodes. I think we said we were going to find out why Nick's taking too long on number 1, but then you move over to number 2 and you're like, who are all these people? And then you're like, who are all these characters? What? And then you like start building it up, but you're like, well, I still have love for the original ones, like to the fact that, well, never mind. I'm not going to talk about anything else on that. And then you go to 3, and then you're just like, okay, we're playing D&D, but it's like at a certain point, like it loses its like charm because it's been the same thing over and over again. So to Nick's point is like building something that will outlive them as, a D&D podcast is a smart move.
For sure. I mean, you'll never be able to replicate the magic of Campaign 1 and the grassroots. I mean, you go back and watch just the YouTube, and like their first episode had, maybe 1,000 viewers, and then it just quickly goes to 50,000 within like 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And the fun part about doing it live on Twitch, like people were buying the pizza all the time and
Right.
doing that kind of crazy things. And like Laura misplaced something and someone said it in chat and she found it, like,
Which is also kind of creepy too.
kind of creepy,
Well,
but
I mean, everyone's watching you do this stuff, so
right.
It's in your left butt cheek pocket. Okay.
All right. And those characters were the archetypes of fantasy that I appreciate way more than Campaign 2. I had my problems with Campaign 2, especially the last half of Campaign 2 just sucked, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay.
And all their characters are like, my name is this, but it's secretly something else. Like, everyone had that. And then everyone always had, like, the super jaded backstory. Oh, yeah, I killed my parents in a house fire, or I was abducted and killed. And it's like, come on. Like, fantasy's supposed to be fun.
Nick's like, what am I getting into with season 2?
It's that argument of Game of Thrones versus Lord of the Rings. Like, Game of Thrones is fantasy, sure, but it's like that depressing, everyone fucking dies. Versus Lord of the Rings, which is, hopeful and joyful. And yeah, you have some character deaths, but it's like, the good guys beat the bad guys.
Well, it depends on which side you're on.
what if I am one of the bad
Yeah,
guys?
so if you actually escape from Bloodkeep, which is a Dimension 20, like
I've watched a lot of that, and they were the bad guys.
I love that one. They weren't in their eyes, and like the whole like, I don't know. I love that. That's a really great one. But I think I do love the lighthearted ones. Like my favorite one that I do love Critical Role because I think it is very too, like mechanically it is very solid.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, I'll listen to the Adventure Zone, which are the McElroys, or Dimension 20, where, Brendan is amazing, but he has lots of goofs. And a lot of like pop culture references, and then Dungeons and Daddies, which is like all the guy, Freddie Wong and like the guys from what is it, Rocket or Rooster Teeth or whatever, one of those like gaming YouTube things, and Anthony Birch, who wrote Borderlands. So
Yeah. So Nick, why is it taking you so long to get through Campaign
yes,
1?
tell us.
I have several other podcasts I listen to, and then Well, and then they did something with Spotify, so I've gone back to listen a couple of times, but like the Spotify for Critical Role, like things got changed around. I was like, I can't even figure out where the fuck I was at before.
It's probably when it switched from Geek and Sundry, because it was Geek and Sundry, and then they became their own thing. So I know there's a part, because I remember like I was on one Critical Role thing through like episode whatever, and then I had to move to another one. It was very weird.
So I got lost in that, and then I just didn't put in any effort to find where I was.
What episode did you get to?
They were in the middle of fighting Thordak, so
Okay.
they were probably about halfway through that fight.
Okay.
That was another thing too, is I started watching that, but I watched the actual live so I could see everything going on more than just listening to it. So then that probably didn't help either when I started watching it like on YouTube or whatever versus just continuing to listen to it. So yeah.
Well, I do love like that. I will listen to a lot of episodes on podcasts, but when it's like a major like fight or something like that, I'm like, I'm gonna watch the YouTube or the Twitch or whatever, because I want to see like it and like the minis and TM it.
Right.
I mean, you miss half of Sam's gags if you just listen to the podcast.
Also true.
Yeah.
I mean, the Burt Reynolds thing, and he puts on the mustache and the cowboy hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or Scambo, where he puts the tie around his head the whole episode. Like, and even his ad reads that he does is just crazy.
A very visual thing. And a lot of times I'll start listening to it, and then like it sounds crazy, and I'm like, all right, hold on, and then I like swerve over on the highway, and I'm like, everyone stop. And then I watch the intro, and I'm like, all right, now back to listening to that. So like, there's so many like partially started episodes probably in my YouTube history because I'm like, well, I don't need all this exposition. Like
the shopping episodes. That was the only. I liked the shopping episodes, but it didn't. There was no visuals. Just
Right.
them messing around. I mean, and you watch those earlier episodes of Critical Role, and Matt has grid paper and he's drawing the map or has it drawn before they got big and now it's all Dwarven Forge stuff.
Are you mad at Dwarven Forge? You looked at me and looked very upset when you're like, Dwarven Forge.
I mean, it's the same thing with Wormwood. It's incredibly expensive, and it doesn't need to be, in my opinion.
I can't remember what it's called, but there's like a pirate Dwarven Forge where you can like 3D print all this stuff, and that's like they upload the STL files, which I do think that artists should get paid for their work.
100%. That's
But,
a little.
There is stuff out there that if you are shady and cheap, which is fine to be shady and cheap because I don't like spending money, I would do grid paper for you guys.
Right. Like, it's molded plastic. It doesn't need to be hundreds of dollars. And the Wormwood is like $1,000 for a basic gaming table. Even their dice trays are like $70 to $100. And it's like, oh my God. Ugh.
Yeah, instead you bought me mystery die for what, $7 a piece?
Uh-huh.
And I got some sweet alien dice. I rolled.
Hell yeah.
I had them in my car, and I can't remember what. I had to choose something, and I rolled it. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Got to test out these dice." But I was still very upset that first time I rolled all four of them. I rolled a 1, a 2, and a 20.
Hey, that happens. Anything else about Critical Role, DaggerHeart?
No, I don't think so.
The Charmed ones.
Like I said, we're gonna give Shannon a break. Well, I'll catch up. I'll keep an eye on it and let everyone know. But right now, we're gonna cool it on that.
We'll probably talk about the campaign next.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just to let you guys that are listening, and by you guys I mean us listening in the future, and or maybe my mom, maybe someone accidentally clicked on this one instead of Rachel Ray's casserole podcast, if that exists. I would probably listen to it. But I think we're gonna go through when I say the whole 3 episodes I was in, but go through the campaign and kind of do a recount of. Do we want to do basically each episode, catch people up on what's going on?
That was my plan, doing a commentary on the episode.
Yeah.
Sure.
What happened, recap. Nick can tell us how he felt.
I
I'll
think
just cry all the time.
I think mostly Nick just wants to hear my takes on what I would have done in this scenario.
Oh, I would actually very much love that.
When I'm
100%.
Yelling at why are you doing that?
No, you're stupid. Don't do it that way.
I mean, there were so many times I'm just like, fuck, and then I'm just like, but I've been in those scenarios when you're like, oh, this is a great idea, and then you're like, a 1, you're like,
This was a bad idea.
Womp womp. Or the fact that they were on session 0. They were sent on the mission to go find a couple of people, and they
didn't even do their mission.
that
They got distracted by a fucking robot.
I mean, that happens. I've had, people get in fights and get stuck under tables for an entire episode. That's Ryan Freeman for you. But I think ultimately, we want to go through those. And I know we're trying to work out the logistics, but we're trying to get back to the original campaign. Mm-hmm. I feel like if I say it on air, we have to do it.
Willing it into existence.
Yeah, kind of like the same thing with DaggerHeart. I was like, well, I'm kind of half-heartedly saying this. And then you guys were like, yeah, we're doing it.
I mean, I want to go back to the campaign, whether it's offline or online, doesn't matter. If we do it offline, we'll probably do the podcast and just recap what happened.
Maybe we do it half online and half offline, And so like
And then they're so lost.
and they're just so lost and like what happened? And then they have to come to your house
We in
to
the
find
middle.
out.
We in the middle of a fight, and then they come back in, and we've already played 2 sessions after that.
Yeah.
They're like, "What the fuck happened last time?"
Yeah, but then they'll come to your house and then we've got new players.
I mean, I've even thought about doing this is the rest of the campaign that I had written in episodes. I've thought about writing the story down. So I'm
And then
kind of
Nick and I can just be voice actors and we can just
yeah, absolutely.
play. Hi y'all, I'm Babylon.
No, Enoch, don't.
No, this is Babylon.
So we're gonna figure something out. There's only 40-something episodes, I think, of the campaign.
Heck yeah, so we got a whole year to figure it out.
100%. That's kind of the reason why I wanted to do
Just
that.
kidding. We're gonna figure it out before a year, and hopefully then we can start speeding through, and maybe we can do like a couple episode recaps as we figure it out and get the logistics going. But we are willing it into an existence, so people, please, if you see us at the grocery store, you yell at us and you tell us, make it happen.
Yeah, because you know exactly what we look like.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.